fresh week on Talking Heads, and we've got some live studio guests on the programme today. He's responsible for some of the things that we seem to talk about most on this programme, primarily our roads, specifically the controversial new Douglas Promenade scheme. Glen Faber and Peel MHK Ray Harmer's been in Key since 2015 and became Infrastructure Minister fairly soon afterwards. And like former US President Bill Clinton, he plays saxophone. Hopefully that's one of the few things that you share with the ex-president, Ray. Joining him in the studio from the Highways Division is Alan Hardinge. Gentlemen, welcome to Talking Heads. Minister,
welcome.
Thanks very much for coming in.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. We spoke a while ago about this, and it's taken a bit of organising, but good that you've come in.
Thank you.
We do talk an awful lot on this programme. A lot of people get in touch about potholes. I'm sure we'll get to that shortly. But the Promenade scheme, and I know that you've explained this until you blew in the face. Why is it necessary to spend £21 million on Douglas Promenade when the government's got no money?
It's essentially the main arterial route on the island. 6 million vehicle movements every year. It's the main gateway for the island. It's takes the most traffic. The structure of it, the engineering of it is failing. Nothing's been done for probably 80, 90 years. And you know, at the end of the day, if you were to prioritise basically on what needs to be done, that needs to be done. It's absolutely critical.
But is it? I mean, you say that, you know, it's falling apart. There's no actual sign of that. And one of the things that a lot of people quite admired when you took over infrastructure was that fairly quickly after that, or it felt like fairly quickly, you had the promenade skimmed and a temporary surface put on, which seems to be doing a pretty good job. Won't that carry on for another 5-10 years?
No. What will happen is it will start. I mean, I was driving this morning. I've already started to see potholes and things breaking up and the surface degrading, and we'll be in exactly the same place in 5 years' time. And somebody will say something similar, but I think there's a lot more to this, the promenade, than that. I mean, in terms of the lighting scheme, we are just wasting money year on year because we could keep delaying. We keep doing new designs. We keep going round and round circles. I think it first was even mentioned in the year 2000. I would say, you know, a number of millions have been wasted just by continually prevaricating. Yeah. And actually, it obviously it seems a lot of money, but in many respects, it's got some core infrastructure pieces. For example, the utilities, putting proper ducting, you know, to actually so that it can be serviced a lot better. You know, obviously got the horse tram tracks and things like that. So there's a key part, and it's also a key part of the whole regeneration about bringing people together into our centres. But
we're talking about bringing Manx people together in our centres, aren't we? Because
absolutely.
Let's face it, we don't have that many tourists to impress with a shiny new highway anymore, do we?
We still do, and we still, you know, one of the things is we've had it's a record-breaking year on the airport this year. So you know, things are, you know, obviously we've got to develop, and I know there's the visitor economy that continues to develop, but not only that, there's the business economy. So I think we get used to something over many years, but if you come in fresh to the island, it's quite clear it's a piece of infrastructure, the key one, that needs to be dealt with.
Okay, and you say that it's important that it's more than just a road surface. A lot of people have complained or criticised this sort of cultural centre that you're going to have outside the Sefton there, and saying, you know, there's no need for it's never going to be used. It's going to be a white elephant. It's going to be expensive, and it's only done because the politicians are pals with the people who own the Sefton.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely not the case. I think the point is that actually, when one of the things that the first that I did is I looked at the whole review and the whole case. I said, what if we just do like for like all the way across the promenade scheme? What if you took out all the enhancements, and actually the figures are very, very similar. Yeah. So in actual fact, when you build something and you design things right, you get an awful lot of benefit by doing it right. It's like any design. If you get the design and you get all the work done on the paper before you commit to actually work, you can actually get a lot there. And I think it will be just a case of bringing people together, more of a community space. But I think what you'll see, and I really think this is, you know, when it's all done and dusted, we'll look back and we will say this is something we can all be proud of. This is something that changes the whole concept of the promenade from something, if you look at it, has a lot of barriers in there. It feels quite intense. The promenade will feel more open, more spacious, where pedestrians and will feel much more comfortable, and you know, bus stops, things like that, taxi ranks, a lot more common sense into the design.
All right. And I mean, I take your point about making it more inclusive and more usable and new spaces and things, but this has been done before and it's failed. I mean, I remember years and years ago when I used to present Mandate, one of the first jobs that I did was go down to what was going to be the town square down on the Loch Promenade there. And, you know, people had great ideas. It was going to be wonderful. It was going to be a meeting place for people. It was never used, and it was, you know, it's derelict fairly quickly afterwards. And you know, people were vandalising the place. So are we confident that whatever you're going to put into the new promenade scheme isn't going to end up like that?
When I remember it, and I remember thinking what a disaster it was at the time. I thought this is an absolute joke, and it was one of those thought you think it's just one of those sort of almost like a cubby hole that almost creates, if you like, not vandalism, but sort of, you know, an area where you wouldn't want to go. It's dark, it's not open. What the prom will do as well, one of the extra benefits, I mean, let's remember, it's primarily an engineering job to get the road into a state for the next 40, 60, probably 80 years, to be honest. But what it will do as well, it will have a regeneration effect. I'd be surprised if that didn't get developed very soon afterwards, because you're a key pivotal part of Douglas.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, a lot of people say, well, politicians shouldn't get involved in these things. They don't understand the technicalities of things like that. And I often say, well, but that's what they've got, you know, civil servants for. But looking at your CV on the Tynwald.org site today, I see that you've got an MA in engineering. So I don't think you've used it as such, have you? But I'm guessing that you've got a pretty good grounding in a lot of the things that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, where we're coming from, obviously the first I was at Arabs in London, and I've had 4 or 5 and before university as well, so about 6 years experience there. But obviously, so I'm going back to my roots, if you like, and to me, to actually see the engineering of it, to me, is the bit that's the most important. As I said, by doing the engineering and getting the design right, we can actually design all of these other features, which I think is such a creative design. And I applaud the team. I mean, Kieth Podmore's here today, but the whole team that's actually developed it. I'm actually quite excited about it. I think it's one of those things that you want to see through, but I think it's going to be something quite special for the island.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Because we don't like change. And I remember when the first plans came out that Phil Gorn unveiled down at the Sea Term, I thought, oh, well, that looks fantastic. But then we talked about it on this programme, and everybody said, it's a nightmare, it's a disaster waiting to happen, it's not going to work, it's a waste of money and all the rest of it. So we're a bit resistant to change.
We are, but I think that's some of the elements, and I think you do that by talking to all the different stakeholders. So, for example, you know, a common misunderstanding, I still hear this as a shared spaces scheme. It absolutely isn't a shared space scheme. It's got curbs, it's got all of the lights, it's got all of those sort of normal features, but it does have a very innovative design to it to give a whole new feel, as well as doing all the functions it needs to do, which is the roads, the cars, the lorries, the buses, the taxis, the horse trams, people, cycling. It's quite a complicated, complex space, and I think it's something at the end of it we'll be rightly proud of.
Okay, and I mean, in terms of things like the horse trams, was it ever considered to Comyn level to get rid of the horse trams? Because that must have been a complicating factor in these plans.
It is a complicating factor, but I do think heritage is really important. I've always sat on the sort of the heritage sort of side of things, so I know. But that's why I'm so impressed with the design, because we've actually incorporated it all the way into the sea terminal, something where I thought we would lose more parking, which we haven't, and being able to incorporate all the way through, so we retain what's key to the past, but also look to the future. You're right, it does complicate it, absolutely does, but in actual fact, I think it's actually given us a really good answer. Okay,
I mean, the design that we're working on now, has that been done in-house? Because I think the previous grand scheme was done by external people, wasn't it?
It's mostly in-house, but Keith, all in-house, yeah. So,
Kieth Podmore's here in the studio as well, and maybe your design team leader. Yeah. What sort of process did you go through? I mean, did you sort of pick up the pieces of the original plan, the grand plan, and choose bits out of it, or did you take a clean sheet of paper?
No, the scheme has always been developed within-house, within the department. Yeah. So back to 2006, when we first brought the scheme forward, the minister at the time brought the scheme forward. And since that point, the scheme has developed through the years and through the various design elements. We've looked at different aspects. We've been and had a look when shared space was first talked about. We had a look at shared space schemes in the UK. There are a lot of benefits to those, but there are a lot of disbenefits. And what we've done is we've tried to take the benefits out of these schemes, and we've enhanced them so that we're actually going to produce a scheme now that the island can be proud of, and we can take forward, and people will look at Douglas Promenade and say, that's an excellent example of how other cities may want to develop their highways and their town centres.
All right, good stuff. So, Minister, just finally, and we'll come back to this, I'm sure, because
sure.
I reckon that we've got listeners who've got questions about the Promenade scheme. Is it true then to say it's got to be done? At some level, it's got to be done, and there aren't many ways that you can save money over the 21 million quid that you're talking about?
I think it's got to be done. Of course, you could delay, but then other things will start failing, and you will then set more costs and design fees. You've got a Douglas Corporation that looking to put a lighting scheme in, that's put back. You've got MUA looking to put their drains, that's put back. The highway drains are failing. You know, you just accumulate costs, so you actually will spend more money by delaying it.
Yeah, and I mean, is there any income from any of this? You say the MUA and assumedly Manx Telecom and people like that all want this work to be done because it will benefit them. Do you get any money back from them, or is it just taking money out of one pocket and putting it back in another?
Well, it's working together really, because if you coordinate services, you know, one of the things, as I say, in the future that we can plan for is obviously fibre optics, but electric cars, and we're putting in points for those. All of those things that actually will take this forward into the future. But it's more of a case of sharing costs and
well, that's as long as something's coming in. I mean, people would be outraged if they thought that Manx Gas, which is privately owned by an offshore company, was going to benefit from the taxpayer yet again.
Yeah, and I would be as well.
Right, good. Okay, well, I'm going to come back to the Minister and our other guests in a minute, because I think we need to talk about potholes, but we'll take a break. This is Talking Heads on Manx Radio, and we've got some studio guests on the programme today for a change. Infrastructure Minister Ray Harmer is here, along with Alan Hardinge, Highways Division, and Kieth Podmore, who's the DOI Design Team Leader. We've been talking about the Promenade scheme. Hopefully we've cleared up a few matters as far as that is concerned. But Minister, one of the big issues on this programme is potholes. Constantly we hear that we've got the worst roads in the Western world. I'm not sure if that's fair or not, but you know, we do seem to have some pretty broken up roads nowadays. What's happening about it?
Okay, I think one of the things is to first of all say I think you're right. I think a lot of the roads are really good. I was again driving around and I was cycling and some really lovely roads up there. And we've had one of the really kind of worst winters for this kind of thing. We've had, if you remember, Hurricane, was it Ophelia? But back in October, we had storms from there causing a lot of damage. Then we've had ice and snow, and obviously with ice it expands the holes. The land is completely saturated, and it's a perfect combination of ice, then mild, then ice, then mild, to create numerous potholes. Yeah,
well, I think we all understand that, and we know that the adverse weather is probably getting worse and it's causing more problems. But people are concerned, and I'm concerned, for example, about all these new road schemes that we've got. The corners, Windy Corner, Brandish, Richmond Hill, have all been redone at vast expense, and they all seem to flood whenever there's any rain. And I'm sure that the rain, it might be a little bit heavier now and then, but I'm not sure it's worse than it ever was. Why is that? Can we not do drainage, or is it because we're not employing enough people now to clear out the culverts and drains?
Well, I can probably refer to Alan on the sort of the drainage sort of thing, but one of the things that does need to be sort of highlighted is back in 2008, one of the things that I've noticed is that there was a complete shrinkage in maintenance funding, and about £2.7 million. Well, over a number of years, that's going to have an impact on the ability to maintain, because there's always two parts to a reconstruction, if you like. A number of things that you can do. Obviously, you deal with the pothole, but then you've got to actually put a more permanent fix in. You've got dressings that you can put there, and as you rightly say, with drains as well. So it continually, if there isn't that investment over a number of years, there will be a degrading, and obviously I think a number of staff, the staff is reduced dramatically in trying to resolve these issues. So that's something that I'm really keen to sort of fight for, to put right, because it isn't just about fixing the pothole that we need to do, but it's about doing that ongoing work afterwards.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's bring Alan Hardinge in at this point then, because to us ordinary motorists, you see a pothole and you think that's a 5-minute job to fix it. I expect that it's probably not. So if somebody reports a pothole to you, what sort of work is involved?
Yeah, just to give you an idea, Stu, a 4-week period in January this year, through Report a Problem, the app that we use.
I've used that. It's a very good application as well.
We've had 535 defects reported.
Yeah.
They're all what we class as Cat 1 defects, which we aim to repair, make safe within 24 hours. Now, historically, the data we've got, we're normally looking at about 125 a month. So you can see the scale of what we're dealing with.
And I'm guessing it's not just a bloke with a bucket of hot tar that can fix these things.
It's not just a bucket of hot tar, and we realise a number of the make-safe repairs that we do, initially, there will be an element of failure. We're repairing defects in what is already a defective piece of highway. So where we can, we cut the pothole out, we do a permanent repair, and that will last, or we do a make-safe, so the problems being reported, go out there within 24 hours, make the pothole safe, and then schedule that for a permanent repair in the future.
The other thing that I seem to have noticed a lot of recently, including on roads that have recently been resurfaced, is that the grids all seem to drop by a couple of inches. So you're driving along, I was driving past the Nunnery on Friday night, I think, and I was having to sort of swerve around the grids because a lot of them, were light potholes, really. Is that a problem just here, or is it just, the nature of the beast?
I think, like I say, it is evident across the network that, as the Minister has already said, the type of weather we're getting, and although it doesn't appear, we do appear maybe not getting more rainfall, but we're getting more rainfall in shorter periods of time.
But that's not going to make a metal sort of manhole cover sink into the surface,
what
is
it is, it's washing out, in some cases, the foundation or lack of foundation that's in the road, and then we're getting settlement.
Yeah.
So the ironwork is settling.
I see.
You'll see the crazing on the network and the mud coming through the surface. Basically, those roads, they have no foundation. So
right.
We're starting off in a poor condition.
I remember John Shimmin saying to me years and years ago about this when I interviewed him about the state of the roads, and he said the trouble that what you've got to remember is that the Isle of Man, most of the roads are just built. They've evolved over the years. They've never been given proper foundations. They're just cart tracks that have been tarmacked over and had stones and things thrown at them. Minister, is
that's absolutely right. You've hit the nail on the head. And most of the have not been constructed in normal engineering fashion. I mean, engineering can be really quite complex on roads, and in many instances, literally, if you like, a tarmac straight on pretty much maybe a small bit of hardcore. But the problem is that easily washes out, and also if you've got more cars and over time, you're going to get more defects.
Well, and when we talk about it, I mean, people talk about these things in the UK on the motorways where they'll get a gang of blokes who can relay a mile of motorway a night, sort of thing. So why is it going to take 3 years to do the Promenade? But you're not really comparing like with like, are you?
No, absolutely not, because it's a complicated. It's more about a logistic exercise. There's been if you're starting with a blank piece of paper, there's no other businesses there. There's 145 businesses, and that you have to deal with. You have to deal with all of the nature of the horse tram tracks, the walkway, the cyclists, everything like that, and maintain the 6 million vehicle movements as well. Yeah. Putting that in all one complicated beast, if you're doing a fresh road, of course you could. I mean, as you've seen, as was the case when we did the temporary works, that actually when we all plan it together, we don't have to coordinate it with water, electricity or gas.
You're just sort of carpeting.
You saw how quickly it was done because you're only dealing with one moving part.
Gotcha. All right, stick your headphones on, gents, because I know that we've got some callers who want to speak to you. And our first caller is Howard. Howard, good afternoon. Oh, is he there? Hello, Howard. No, not working. Okay, and we'll try Howard in a while. Let's see if we can speak to Quirky then. Hello, David.
How you doing, mate? I thought it was first on, but never mind. Good morning.
Well, you are now, aren't you?
The panel's there. Anyway, listen, the main thing about the Promenade scheme, as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be done. What needs to be done, though, and I'm hoping the Minister or his members of his team will actually say to it, is who's going to project manage it? Who's going to look over the scheme and say to us, if we're running over budget or it's running away with stuff that we can't think, can tell us when it goes wrong? That's one question. Can I also ask, too, regarding the new roads that are done, when are they evaluated after they've been done, after a few months, to find out whether the gullies are too low or the water now...
Oh, like snagging a new house kind of thing.
Yeah, looking after that. And I've complained about the one on Hilbury Road. The job was done great. But what's happening now, every time it rains, and happened at the weekend again, the water goes from one side of the road to the other and misses every gully coming down the road, but then pours down the bottom of the Manx Arms.
All right. Well, a couple of questions there. Let's go to the Minister and see if we've got any answers.
Hi, David. Yeah, I mean, in terms of project management, obviously we've got a project manager in terms of the overall scheme, but one of the key things is communications, and we are recruiting somebody to take on that role to actually coordinate and communicate liaison, which is a really, really important point. Yeah. Now, on the evaluation and so forth, obviously that's a key bit. I think one of the things that we've seen is that we've moved from, if you like, all of the work being in-house to contracting, and that has been a skill that's had to be developed. And I think we'd all see that actually that is something that's needed to be improved and has improved and will need to improve further in terms of evaluating the scheme. So, I mean, but in terms of some of the sort of detailed matrices, maybe Keith has got a bit more on that.
But you're not there on the subcontractors yet, because look at the one that's happening in Onken. You've got a contractor working in the middle of the village. He started off 5 jobs and not completed. He's only completed 3. Alan.
Well, I mean, maybe Keith can sort of give a more general, and then Alan on the Pacific. On
the Promenade, Mr. Quirk, we're going to put the scheme out to tender. So we'll be bringing in hopefully one contractor to look after the whole of the scheme. That might involve having several subcontractors underneath that main contractor, but as far as managing the scheme and project managing the scheme, the finances and the actual logistics of the scheme, the DOI will have an overview of the whole scheme itself.
All right, David, thank you very much for your call. Need to move on because we're going to have a busy hour, I can tell. Let's see if we can find Howard now. Hello, Howard.
Hi, Stu.
Yeah,
I was cut off in midstream.
Ah.
No, just listen to the final words of that chap. I don't know. Is in with Mr. Harmer.
Oh, Kieth Podmore just speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, bringing in contractors, put it out to tender. Let's assume it's an open tender and can possibly go out to the UK as well. Now, we've had recently the Carillion, and we've had the people who were going to build the power station.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about a serious amount of money here, and they should have to put up a very large, fund in case they go to the wall.
Oh, I see. Or either that or pay it into some sort of an escrow account.
Or what these people will do, they'll do the tender at a very low price and suddenly find they've underestimated. And next thing they're crying poverty. We can't do it, or we can only do it cheap.
Yeah.
But that's by a leave. What the introduction to this was the potholes. And they were saying the other day there's £13 million per annum paid in road tax. And the next voice says all the money paid in road tax, etc., goes on the roads.
That's what I've been told over the years,
Yeah, and this is what the politicians are saying themselves. So it's either yes or no. So the Promenade scheme is 21 million. So that's 2 years road fund licences paid for. Where has the rest of the money been going? Because they've only said that they've spent £750,000 last year on maintenance. Where has the other 12 million gone? And why haven't the potholes been done up round the White Hole? They've been there for 2 years now.
Okay. All right. Well, let's ask the Minister that question, because this is something I was going to come on to. I think it was Buster Lewin that put a Freedom of Information request in to find out about road tax or road fund licence, whatever it's called. £12 million coming in every year, and according to him, 800,000 going out, 750,000 going out. What's the truth? Because your predecessors have all told me over the years that every bit of money that comes in from road tax and more goes into the road system of the Isle of Man.
Yes, and I mean, one of the things that I thought was important was actually to move the income of road tax back into the highway department. So that's one of the things that I did. But I think it's the highways department that is that cost. You've got all sorts of different spends. You've got restructure projects over the network. You've also got minor capital, so things like Foxdale, Black Hill, all of those kind of things that all go in there. So you can't just take one stream of that and say it's 800,000. There's loads of different other parts of that.
But the basic question, and this is a yes/no answer, does all the money raised by road tax go back into the road network of the Isle of Man?
It does.
Right.
It does. Into the highways department, yes.
Right, fine. Okay, good. Let's go back to the lines and have a word with John. Hello, John.
Hi, Stu.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the first question I was going to ask was just been answered by our last caller about the amount of money spent on the roads compared with the road tax.
Yep.
So I'll go on to the second one. Obviously, the whole thing evolves around money. I'd like to ask what has been done about the £400,000 diesel loco sitting down at Bank Circus, which the chances of it ever turning a wheel again are very remote. We've been promised that it would be going in a couple of months. A couple of months goes on. It's just sitting there. I don't know whether it's even got wheels on it now. But the point is, nobody is held responsible. Now, if I worked for a private company and I'd wasted 400,000, I'd be out, kicked out.
All right, well, fine. A good point, well made. Let's go to the Minister then for the answer on this, because I knew it was going to come up. This diesel locomotive. We were told at the time it was vitally important that we had this, that the entire rail network was going to fall apart without it. We've had it for a while, and people tell me it's not working, and the railways are still running.
Obviously, this obviously predates my involvement. But
nice swerve.
No. But what I do know about it, or what I understand to be the case, is the fact that it wasn't actually the vehicle that was wanted or requested originally.
I think this was a cheaper alternative.
A cheaper alternative, yeah. And that's what happens when you get cheaper alternatives.
Still a lot of money, though.
Well, it is, and then you could argue that whether at the time they should have perhaps whether we even went that way. But I know in terms of having a backup, because if there's any problem with the steam railway, if it fails, it has a 1.6 mile climb. You need.
Is it going to be fixed? Is it ever going to work?
Well, I hope so, but it was trying to make a call, possibly maybe not the right one. But the point is, there's lots of priorities, as you know, with the Heritage Railway. But often in these cases, it's better to not to spend properly rather than, if you like, take the cheaper alternative.
Yes and no. I mean, if everybody's got to sort of tighten the belts and not necessarily go with the Rolls-Royce options, then I think it's quite natural that somebody would suggest that there was a cheaper alternative. But it's still got to be a viable alternative, surely. I
think in the hit nail on the head, it has to be a viable alternative.
So if somebody has bought this at best part of £500,000 and it's not been right for the job, do they get fired?
Do they get? Well, I think
people are very concerned that expensive mistakes are made on a regular basis, and all that the politicians say afterwards is time to move on. Lessons have been learnt. Let's look to the future going forward.
Well, I think the thing is with that is I think lessons have been learnt, but in terms of actually trying to repair it, that's what we're trying to do. As I say. Where exactly the decision, it was obviously a failure across a number of different fronts that led to that decision. I don't think it was down to any one particular individual.
Right. Good. John, thank you very much for your call. I want to move on because we've got lots of people who want to have a say on the programme. Here's one. Back to work today. Check Roadwatch website this morning to see if there'd be any delays. 2 traffic light schemes encountered on the way in, which are not listed on Roadwatch. Both caused me substantial tailbacks. One at the entrance to Cronky Thatcher Estate in Colby, the other on the main road to Douglas between Ballasalla and the Blackboards. Queue of cars back to the airport. Why are these not listed on Roadwatch? The website's useless if not all the works are listed. Good point.
Excellent point. We'll look into that.
Okay. Could you ask Mr. Harmer if anything's going to be done with the roads in Peel, please? They're disgusting. I don't know which ones in particular, but
I think the good thing with Peel, there's been a lot of investment recently, obviously with Marketplace and with Queen's Drive, a number of things, but it's across the whole network. We have to prioritise everything.
All right, just a quick question on that, because I know that there's been a lot of criticism of the fact that we seem to have bought the world's entire supply of Chinese paving slabs and we're using them absolutely everywhere. Is that true? Have we got a quarry full of them somewhere?
Not to my knowledge, no. I think what's really interesting, and I do take some sympathy in this, but what's interesting is the fact that there isn't that enormous supply of on-island stone. It's as simple as that, because, obviously that would be the right answer.
Question for the DOI: potholes. Isn't surface dressing the most cost-effective solution for low-cost sealing and maintaining the roads? Why isn't this done more often? That's probably best answered by Alan, I would have thought.
Yeah, surface dressing is obviously an option we can look at, Stu, but there's various options: patching, complete plane and inlay, surface dressing, micro asphalt. They all are considerations we give.
Surface dressing's a pain if you're on a motorbike, I know that. Constantly being told that this obscene £21 million vanity ego polishing scheme is vital to stop the promenade being washed into the sea. Does this mean that the Irish scheme is about to be swept away? And can I ask Mr. Hardinge, why have the pavements on Leaney Road, is it, been re-tarmacked, yet the road's like a roller coaster laden with potholes? Also, why has that road been allowed to become a commercial vehicle van park along both sides of the road? It's not an area that I know, so I don't know if there's an answer to that.
No, the footways have been resurfaced because we've had a number of complaints about trip hazards on the footways, so they were part of the maintenance programme and we've followed up on those complaints.
All right, let's take another quick call from Steve. Hello, Steve.
How you doing, Stu? You okay?
Yeah, good, thanks. What's your question for our panel of guests?
Well, I know the ministers get sick of hearing about this, but when we go about the state of the roads, Stu,
yeah.
I'll pick one road. I live in Ballasella, and I'm heading. I bought a brand new vehicle from my business, and you're driving out of the garage. It's all lovely. And you're heading down towards Ballasella, and you've got the Stanton Motel, and just off that corner there, it's hell towards the ferry bridge. It's bump, bounce. You're throwing out your vehicle nearly.
Yeah.
You don't have your seatbelt on. These guys use these roads as well, and not just that, potholes. And you're flying down the road. Example, speed limits. Obviously, you're sticking to all the speed limits. You're driving down the road, bang, and it sends your steering column, nearly out the vehicle. And that pothole will remain there, and then you see them digging up a side road that's got nothing to do. Hardly anyone uses this side road, and they'll start other roadworks on other areas. You think, hang on a minute, put right what's already wrong.
Yeah, all right, good point. And let's go to the minister on this, because you raise an interesting issue. I've thought this in the past. We've got limited amount of money. It seems sometimes that you're doing daft roads when there are far worse roads that ought to be done. Athol Street in Douglas was resurfaced a few years ago, and it wasn't in that bad condition. I don't know that Circular Road was in that bad condition, but there are roads, like Steve said, down by the Stanton Motel on the main road there, which is like one of those tank training courses. So how do you prioritise the roads that you're going to do?
Well, I think taking Circular Road, for example, I think that has a lot of heavy traffic, and it was really really important to do that. But also, it's important to coordinate with other services, so that's often a factor as well. So things are prioritised. In terms of potholes, I would ask everyone to report a problem. We will deal with it, and if it isn't dealt with in those 24 hours, certainly I'd be very interested. But I come back to my main point. If you have 10 years of underinvestment, you get this. I'll be fighting hard for more money. But the trouble is, but it's more that year-to-year money that we have to fight for.
You and every other minister would have thought.
Absolutely.
All right, more questions coming up, but we need to take a very quick break. This is Talking Heads, and our studio guests today are Infrastructure Minister Ray Harmer, Alan Hardinge, who's from the Highways Division, and Kieth Podmore, who's DOI design team leader on the Promenade scheme and other things as well. And let's have a look. We've got loads of text, so let's rattle through these as quickly as we can. Stu, can you ask Mr. Harmer about the way that smart cars park on the island? They park facing out. Is this legal? If so, can you park any car that way, says Neil. I don't know if you know the answer to that.
No, I have to come back.
I don't know, to be honest. You do. You see them parking sort of, they back into the curb rather than parking side on.
I would have thought I don't know. I have to come back, but I would have thought they're the same regulations as everybody else.
I would have thought that as long as they don't exceed the width of the parking bay or whatever, they're all right. But it's an interesting one. We don't know is the answer. I'm awfully sorry about that, Neil. Not only the promenade sorting out, how about the beach too? Get rid of the seaweed instead of pushing it back into the sea. Tell us about do you know this? We often get this comment about the fact that we employ a bloke with a tractor to push the seaweed back and then push it, and all he's doing is moving it around, not removing it. Well, I mean, what is it to keep the flies down or something like that? Or?
Obviously, this is a question with Douglas, but I'm aware that what they're trying to do is to get it on the tide and then for it to be taken out. But I'm intrigued by other places that use seaweed for all sorts of products. I've always thought we could be doing a lot more.
Put it on the land.
Put it on the land. Or
Jersey
so
they did
forth.
that, didn't they?
Yeah,
that was supposedly how you got the tasting Jersey potatoes.
Exactly.
Why do I see men who are sent to fix potholes in the road using coal tar? Surely if they were provided with hot tar and actually cut out the potholes, rolled it in the hot tar, it would last longer. Let's let them do the job once and do it right, says Alan. Can you pour coal tar?
Yeah, there's various products, Stu. There is a rake and roll material. It's a cold product. It will be a permanent repair if the pothole is cut out correctly and reinstated. Again, depending on the surface surrounding the repair.
Okay, one for the Minister. Please don't do a cultural centre. We have a museum and other venues for this use. It really isn't needed. Well, I mean, what do you, it's been called a cultural centre. What sort of cultural events do you see taking place in the middle of the road there?
I think obviously it's something that got unanimous support in Tynwald, but it's more than just it's an area to bring together, if you like, the Gaiety, the villa, and that whole area. And it's a meeting space. It's a community space. It will link in perfectly with the Castle Street regeneration. You'll see the whole place come together. Whereas at the moment it's very much like a fortress.
Promenade development benefits the Sefton more than any other hotel. Are the Sefton paying towards the costs? Asks Pat.
Yes.
Oh, right, good. There you go. Stu, I usually drive a 4-axle wagon on our super-duper roads and get bounced around. I thought it was worse because of the 4 axles. I'm in a little wagon today with only 2 axles. It's a lot worse. Perhaps Mr. Harmer should spend less on the prom and do something about the other roads. The rubbish, says Dave. Priorities?
Well, but I come back to the point. It's 6 million vehicle movements every year. It's not been done for 80 years. I mean, it's if you're listing the roads, that's the priority. But like I said before, because there hasn't been the investment, and we're dealing with the sort of an infrastructure that, if you like, is tarmac over soil, then we do have these issues.
All right, let's go back to the lines. And hello.
Hi.
Hi, who's calling?
Dave.
Dave, hiya Dave. What's your question for our team here?
I'm just a bit bemused. Did I hear somebody say that they look at potholes within 24 hours?
Alan Harding, was it within 24 hours that you look at potholes?
We aim to make safe potholes within 24 hours.
I know this might be a bit off, not what you're talking about, but we've had a problem with our lane in Falcon Street for... Well, we had MHKs up 15 years ago. We've had somebody up because we've had 2 bad falls, one where somebody hurt their shoulder, one where somebody hurt their knee, and it was so bad, and we were told by your department that because it was so bad, it was almost like a third world country, that it would have to go on the list and it would be about 10 years. So we had to pay for somebody to come up and fill in one of the potholes. Now, the whole place is in a bad way. The second one is out near Maccled. I had an accident 7 months ago and nearly lost my arm. We reported it within 2 days, went out there yesterday, and the same pothole is still there, waiting to claim somebody else. So within 24 hours is absolutely ridiculous.
So, Alan, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, all we can do, Dave, is follow up on these areas. Like I said before, within December we had 535 defects reported. Like I say, we aim to make safe as many as possible within 24 hours, but we are working on the information that we're receiving on reported problems. But
he's saying that some of these things go back donkey's years. So do things fall off the list, do you think? How do you prioritise? You've got 500 repairs to do. How do you prioritise which ones get done first?
Well, yeah, and it is, Stu, 535 defects made safe. There's then the follow-up repairs, which will take longer. They have to be prioritised and have to go into our forward maintenance plans.
So if somebody like our caller has got a problem and they've known about it for years, they've reported it years ago and it's still not being done, do you welcome them sending reminders or,
yes.
or is that the answer,
yes.
right?
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Yes, we do, because priorities do change, and things will slip down the priority list.
Right. Okay.
But we will follow these up.
All right, good stuff. What's happening with the south end of Douglas Prom, the bottom of Summerhill's a disgrace, right the way up to Corkhill's roundabout in Onchan? That's from Dodsey. Any thoughts of doing Summerhill?
That's one of the areas. Obviously, when the prom is done, to coordinate efforts on those sort of areas. But I mean, I can't give any firm commitments yet. But I am aware of that being a potential one.
All right, here's a contentious one. Can the minister confirm the government's reasons for its obsession with killing retail with the loss of parking with the prom scheme? There's been some criticism of the fact that 75 spaces are going to be lost?
75 spaces are going to be lost. I think some of that for different reasons. Obviously, we've got better buses. We'll be able to get in taxis. A lot of it is about modern cars. They're bigger. We have spaces in some of those centres, but obviously parking is one of those areas that we're looking at.
Okay. What else? Stu, truck driver think there needs to be more parking for trucks along the prom for deliveries and stuff. That's something I've heard as well, that it's very difficult. There are not enough loading zones and things.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that's been designed.
It is, yeah. We've incorporated a number of loading bays within the scheme.
Okay.
To be of assistance to local businesses and
because especially Strand Street, I mean, all those shops there have got to be serviced, haven't they?
Exactly, that's right.
Yeah, and the hotels.
And this is the complicated thing. You have to put all of those things together to get a scheme together.
Correct, that's it.
All right. From the airport, the Newcastle Town Road is a gateway to Douglas, essentially the island too. The stretch from Ferry Bridge to just past the motel is appalling. Ride experience is like a roller coaster, etc., etc. That from Peter. I think we've probably covered that. But any plans to do that bit of road?
It's on our list. We will, as I say, it's a conversation we have with Treasury and we'll continue to have.
Okay. If all the design for the prom's been done in-house, how do the design fees run into millions? How much are you paying your employees?
It's actually not just it's using a number of different other people as well. And every time you change a design at last minute, whatever, it does cost. It costs significantly.
Still can't agree with this scheme. It'll drive people away from town. Losing vital parking spaces can't be good for the shops. There's a huge space next to the War Memorial. No one sings or dances there. The weather's getting stormy, so we can't understand this cultural zone. Horse trams are a vital part of tourism. Should be single track all the way with passing place outside the villa also. As this is a main route, how will shared space work, says Liz? Well, it's not really going to be shared space anymore, is it, in the original?
No, and there's spaces, as I say, in Chester Street and so forth. So I think we can, it's about creating a really important area. It's about traffic movements and all sorts. It's as I say, it's a number of issues.
Final question from Barry. 100 ply-for-hire taxis licensed in Douglas, 6 available spaces in the only busy part of Douglas, which is Victoria Street. Does the Minister have any plans to introduce more spaces on Victoria Street for taxis?
Well, on the prom, there's going to be more spaces, so I think that's a key part on Victoria Street. I mean,
just to look at that, we are looking at Victoria Street at the moment for another highway scheme as part of the regeneration works from going on Duke Street and down to Market Hill.
Brilliant. All right, we're completely out of time, so apologies if anybody sent in a comment and we've not got to it. But for now, Infrastructure Minister Ray Harmer, Alan Hardinge, Kieth Podmore, thank you very much indeed for coming in today.
Thank you.